All right, guys, in today's video, we are talking about Halo Infinite once again because we have a very interesting report about it coming out. And it is a rumor, but the rumor is claiming that Microsoft is now considering dropping the Xbox One version of Halo Infinite because it's just not working out. Turns out cross-gen development really isn't something that's just as easy as pressing a couple of buttons, and it's all about scalability. Doesn't really work that way. Who would have thought, right? And so this is where the reason why I want to cover this is not only because I think it's good news, believe it or not. I mean, obviously, the whole situation with Halo Infinite is far from ideal, but I do think that this counts as good news, and I'm certainly behind it. But it really does just completely tear the narrative of cross-gen game development from a large section of the Xbox community where they just say that developers shouldn't have a problem with it. It's so pro-consumer. It's the right thing to do for games, right? It tears that narrative completely in half and just throws it out the window. We've already been covering this last week. For those of you who saw the video, I'm sure many of you did. We covered how John Linneman from Digital Foundry claims that multiple developers have told him that the cross-gen game development process is a painful one. And we also had a former engineer over at DICE confirm that, yeah, cross-gen game development is not nearly as easy as some people want to think it is. And now we have seemingly further proof of that if this rumor is to be believed. Now, first and foremost, I feel the need to kind of put this out here because I already know some people are going to bring it up. They're going to say, MBG, how come you're so quick to believe a negative rumor surrounding something like Halo Infinite than you are about a rumor saying something negative about the PlayStation 5? Well, I think the reasoning for this is obvious, but for those who don't see that, I will explain it to you very quickly. A lot of the negative rumors surrounding the PlayStation 5, and there has been a lot of them, and they continue to pop up, they have continually proven to be completely false. In fact, it almost seems like people just kind of make stuff up to spread fear, uncertainty, and doubt and kind of take the PlayStation brand down a notch. And then Sony officially announces something or shows something, and then all that just goes away. And it's actually better than we expected in some cases. To whereas when it comes to the rumors surrounding Xbox, time and time again, the same cannot be said. But more importantly, putting all of the rumors aside, it comes down to what these companies have shown. When you look at everything that Sony has shown for the PlayStation 5, there's really nothing there at all, in my opinion, that makes me feel as though I should be nervous or that I should be concerned. It's actually quite the opposite. Everything I've seen genuinely gets me excited, and it just continues to build and build as we get closer to the launch of the PS5. To whereas with Microsoft, what they have talked about, and especially now what they have shown, it is highly concerning. Okay, it is concerning when you look at Halo Infinite's gameplay demo. I knew immediately when we saw that, we are immediately seeing the downside to cross-gen game development right before our eyes, and it is highly concerning when you consider the fact that the game has been in development for as long as it has, and it's had a massive, massive budget. So, yeah, I'm just prefacing this video with that because I know people are going to bring that up. But anyway, let's get into it here. Let's talk about why Microsoft is considering dropping the Xbox One version and potentially even delaying this game up until 2022, which is insane to think about because this was meant to be a launch title for the new Xbox console this year. So it says Xbox is considering dropping the Xbox One version of Halo Infinite following its recent delay. It has been claimed. That's according to mod-verified reset era user Sponger, who has previously leaked accurate details on first-party Xbox games. According to the insider, developer 343 Industries is struggling to achieve performance above 900p on the oldest Xbox One S console, which has led to it considering making the shooter a next-gen only title following its recent delay. If true, dropping the Xbox One version would represent a break from Xbox's heavily promoted cross-gen release strategy. Microsoft had previously claimed that all first-party Xbox titles for the next couple of years would release on both the Xbox One and the Xbox Series X. BGC has contacted Microsoft for comment on this story, and we will update you if we receive a response. The current version of Halo Infinite on the Xbox One S is nowhere near 1080p, even lower than 900p, and is having serious asset loading issues much worse than what you've seen on the PC demo. That is what the user on Reset Era wrote. Goes on to say, the idea is to change at the engine level how assets load, make ray tracing as default, improve/unlock some assets, improve geometry, post-processing, and add more CPU-bound interactivity. Furthermore, it is claimed that Microsoft has not ruled out pushing Halo Infinite beyond 2021 if it feels the game would benefit. It's pretty messy up there with decisions, but they are convinced that they need to make the best Halo game ever. So there is your silver lining, okay? For as messy as this situation may be, it is nice to hear, if this is to be believed, and hopefully it is true, because I think this is what we want to hear from Microsoft, honestly, and whoever's in charge there. They do seem to be very much aware of the situation and the fact that this game needs to be not just good, certainly not just okay, it needs to be great. They need to make it the best it possibly can be. And so this is where I find it very ironic, okay? Microsoft and Sony are very clearly going in different directions, and every strategy, every philosophy has its pros and cons. However, I think that Microsoft may have underestimated the potential cons when it comes to their path, the strategy that they've chosen to go with here. And I think we're seeing it unfold right before our eyes, and it seems that they may even be caught off guard by this. What am I talking about? Well, we see Microsoft's path very clearly, where it's all about bringing their games to everybody. It's more about them bringing it to you rather than them trying to get you to come to them. To where Sony is the exact opposite. Sony is about trying to get you to come to them and not necessarily bring it to you. And in doing that, they're trying to bring out the highest quality stuff they can. They're trying to really wow you, right? Whereas with Microsoft, that's not their goal. The only goal that Microsoft has is to try to wow you with the value proposition. But this is where you start to see there are downsides to that. There are downsides to Sony's strategy as well, where there's a lot of risk involved. For example, if Sony doesn't actually deliver on that quality, if Sony fails to impress, then that could spell doom for their strategy. But Sony hasn't been doing that, okay? In this case, with Microsoft, and I've talked about this at length, and this, in my opinion, just further validates me if this rumor is in fact true. By them taking this approach where it's all about bringing it to everybody across all platforms, inherently, you're going to struggle with quality, okay? Inherently, your development teams will be limited in their ambition. That's just the way it is. And you see the reality unfolding right in front of you. This is why I never, ever believed any of these Xbox individuals with large audiences who have continually tried to convince their audiences, as well as many others who maybe are not as aware, that cross-gen development is as easy as 1, 2, 3, right? It's all about scalability. Developers should have no problems. I always thought that they came off kind of arrogant and frankly somewhat ignorant in this sense, because they're just making assumptions. And they are not developers as far as I know. And anybody who claims this and is not a developer, frankly, they're just saying things that they have no idea how true or untrue it may be. They're just taking a shot in the dark and they're just making assumptions. I always thought that there was something wrong with that because, in my opinion, cross-gen game development seems like, if anything, it could be more difficult because you have more SKUs, you have more consoles you have to deal with, more platforms. Inherently just adds more work. The more work you have, the more stress it's going to add, and it requires just a more intense micromanagement. That's how I have perceived it. And I've always assumed that it would probably be harder, not easier. Anyway, as I digress here, what you're seeing here is the reality unfold, and Microsoft is clearly coming to this realization themselves where, it turns out that if you want to make the absolute best version of Halo, you can, right? And you want to meet all of those big ambitions and those big plans you have for the game. Turns out trying to tether that to a 2013 VCR looking console with, ancient at this point Jaguar CPU cores in it, it's not going to happen. It's just not. Now, that doesn't mean you couldn't make a good game. But again, you're talking about the biggest franchise that Microsoft has. You're talking about basically the Xbox brand itself. So the silver lining, as I said here, is that Microsoft seems very much aware that they need to deliver with this game. And they are willing to do what is necessary, which I'm so happy to hear, because maybe this is where Microsoft and Phil Spencer will learn, possibly the hard way, but learn nonetheless, that it turns out in order to achieve the type of quality level that people are expecting, it's going to require that you actually allow your developers to focus their development on, higher end PCs or, mid PCs, I would assume, because we do know that Halo Infinite, no matter what, will still be tethered to PC. But more importantly, allow your developers to really just focus on the Series X. And on top of that, Microsoft does have the Series S, so I don't know how that could impact development, but I can assure you that it will be nowhere near the level that we are seeing it impact development with them being forced to tether it to the Xbox One. Now, I understand from a business perspective, where Microsoft is sitting, maybe this isn't ideal to them because they're like, we would have to forego our entire install base. A lot of fans who were planning on playing this game on the Xbox One would be very upset. But to be honest, I think most people would actually understand. I think they would, especially if they do delay it until 2022. If you think about it, for as bad as that may sound, that may actually end up being a good thing, because it's like the longer it's delayed, the more justified it comes off when they decide to announce it's not coming to Xbox One. So I do think this is a good thing. Again, I think this completely tears that narrative in two. I made that video last week where we covered, people coming out here and speaking on the behalf of developers, as well as a developer themselves actually confirming that cross-gen development is kind of a nightmare. And the sooner we get away from that, the better it's going to be for not only developers, but for games in general. And so this is the reality of Microsoft's situation. Nobody wanted to believe me when I tried to explain as best I could that there are some serious downsides to the approach that Microsoft is taking. You can tell me how pro-consumer it is all day, every day, and how convenient it is. And I'm not denying these things, but there is always a cost associated. Nothing is free, and anybody who has been on this planet long enough should know that. There is a cost associated to everything. You just have to determine, are you willing to pay that cost? There's always risk as well. This is where I look at Sony. Sony is, instead of maybe, focusing on how much of a price they're going to pay, they're focused on how big of a risk they're going to take. Because make no mistake about it, Sony is taking a risk with their approach. But, when they feel confident enough and they know that, yes, there is risk involved, but we've been here before and we know how to handle this situation. We know how to overcome it. We know what next gen really means, right? We know what the right answer is here. Then the risk is greatly reduced, okay? To whereas Microsoft, rather than taking risk at this point, they're just trying to appeal to the lowest common denominator. And when you look at a demo such as what we saw with Halo Infinite, that is the cost associated with that. That is a reality of Microsoft deciding that it's more important to be everywhere, and appeal to the lowest common denominator than it is to allow developers to really progress and move forward. So that's going to do it for the video, guys. I hope you did enjoy it. I hope you did find it informative. If you did, be sure to leave it a like, subscribe to the channel if you're new and haven't already, hit the bell notification icon so you never miss an upload, and feel free to share this video out on top of all that. But until next time, guys, take care.